Maybe you've already walked away. Cut ties, ended cycles, walked away from where it hurt. And yet something inside you still weighs heavy. You've freed yourself, but why do you still feel trapped? This is the question your soul has been asking in the silences. On the days when everything seems light on the outside but your chest remains heavy on the inside. You no longer belong where you were hurt. You're no longer with the one who broke you. You no longer hear the same empty promises, but the emptiness remains. You know you've freed yourself physically but emotionally, spiritually, silently, you continue to live as if you were chained. And Rumi said, "You were born with wings. Why do you still crawl through life?" Maybe today you look around and realize, no one's missing. I'm not in that relationship anymore. I've already moved away from what was hurting me. But even so, there is something that still hurts. It's a pain that no longer has a name or a face, but it remains present. A prison without bars, made of memories, of unhealed attachments, of waiting that never ended. This prison is not external. It is internal. It's the repetition of thoughts, the scene that comes back every night before bed. It's the guilt of having gone mixed with the longing for what wasn't. It's the feeling of being trapped in the past, even though you're free in the present. Do you feel it? Feel like you did everything right? You cut out what was holding you back, sought new paths, even started a journey of self-discovery. But still, you find yourself coming back, reliving, relapsing, not in actions, but in emotions, in the feelings that still don't know how to leave. Maybe what you're feeling isn't weakness. Maybe it's just the echo of a soul learning to heal. Because yes, there is a type of prison that no one sees. A prison made of unhealed memories, invisible emotional bonds, promises you made to yourself when you were still hurt. And now, even though he is free, his soul continues to obey these promises. Have you ever stopped to think about this? Could it be that the problem is not the other? Isn't it more about who hurt you, but about you? And what are you still holding inside, even after you've let it out? There is a silence that screams louder than any noise. It is the silence of someone who is free, but still unable to fly. And maybe you're experiencing exactly that right now. The spiritual prison of someone who has already left prison, but still carries the cell in their heart. Rumi said, "Don't look outside for what can only be cured inside." But how many times have you looked? Have you tried to distract yourself, fill yourself, explain yourself, convince yourself that it's over? How many times have you smiled on the outside, while your soul screamed on the inside, "I'm still here," and it still hurts? Do you feel like something is still pulling you back, as if there were an invisible string tied to your chest, preventing you from breathing fully? This feeling has a name, emotional prison, and she is subtle, spiritual, silent. It doesn't fade with distance nor with time. It only dissolves when the soul decides to go through the pain. But nobody taught you how to do that. No one told you that freeing yourself on the outside was only half the battle. That true healing begins when you decide to stop running away from what you feel. And maybe that's why you're here. Not because you want to relive the pain, but because deep down, you are ready to understand why it still exists. Because a part of you knows you have already freed yourself, but now you need to figure out how to stop feeling trapped. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But first, I want you to write in the comments, "I have freed myself, but my soul still waits for me." If this phrase speaks to your feelings, write it down, not just for the sake of engagement, but as a ritual, a way of saying to yourself, "I am ready to cross what still holds me back. You are not here by chance." If this video reached you, it's because your soul is searching for more than answers. She wants healing. And true healing doesn't just happen with time. It happens when the truth is spoken with courage and received with presence. So, watch this video until the end. Not for me, but for you. Because what we're going to explore here isn't just content. It's consciousness. It's what no one told you about the emotional prison that continues to haunt you, even after you've turned the page. And if this is touching you so far, leave a like. It's a silent way of saying, "I need this." And if you feel that this journey is yours, that these videos are reflections of what you live and feel, subscribe to the channel. This space is a shelter, a temple of words for awakening souls. Now take a deep breath, because we're just getting started. And what comes next, perhaps, is what your soul has needed to hear for a long time. You walked away. You cut ties. You closed chapters that had been hurting for a long time. You told yourself, "Enough. I need to let go of this." And you did. You left behind what hurt you. You severed bonds that, deep down, were already broken. You let go of stories you'd tried to sustain alone for too long. You freed yourself. But even so, you still feel the emptiness. It's as if the prison is gone, but the weight remains. As if the other person has left your life, but remains within your mind, your gestures, your quietest thoughts. As if you've won the battle, but inside, you're still trying to survive the emotional war no one saw. Have you ever felt this? That kind of invisible pain that appears when everything should be fine. When you finally manage to walk away, when you break up with the person who hurt you, when you say, it's over, and yet you still feel like it's not over inside you. It's like there's something wrong with missing even what hurts. As if your soul was trapped in a cycle that didn't completely break, even after the decision. This is the invisible pain of freedom. Because breaking free isn't just about walking away. It's not just about deleting the number, unfollowing, moving to another city, cutting off contact. This may be necessary, and often is. But true liberation does not happen in the external world. It happens inside. And this inside sometimes continues to be inhabited by pain, even after the reason for the pain is no longer present. You ask yourself, why do I still feel this way if I've already freed myself? And maybe this question is there every day, without an answer. You wake up and go about your life, but there's a hidden weariness, an echo that insists on whispering that something is still missing, and that something, often, is yourself. Because in trying to break free from someone, you may have cut yourself off from parts of yourself that haven't yet figured out how to move on. Parties still waiting for closure. Parties that still believe that the pain will only go away when the other person acknowledges what they did, or when time makes you forget. But time doesn't heal what you refuse to feel, and freedom does not fill what you avoid looking at. Rumi said, "The wound is where the light enters you." But you still try to hide the wound. Put layers on top of it, distract yourself, keep busy. Tell yourself that everything is okay, that it's over, that the decision to go was the best thing you ever did. And maybe it was. But the pain doesn't go away just because the choice was right. It still needs to be crossed. And that's what almost no one tells you. Post-release pain is lonely. She doesn't have the validation of the world. The people around you hope you are better. After all, you've already gotten out of that relationship. He's already left that house. Have you gotten over that toxic friendship? But they don't see that inside, you are still relearning how to live without the constraints. Because yes, sometimes ties become habits, and suffering becomes familiar. You get used to missing someone who hurt you. You get used to carrying the pain as if it were part of your identity. And when you try to free yourself from it, you feel empty. Not because you want to go back, but because you haven't learned to live without it yet. And that's the emptiness that hurts. The silence between what you left and what has not yet arrived. The space between who you were and who you're still trying to become. You look around and everything seems lighter. But inside, the feeling is that something hasn't healed yet. And it makes you doubt your strength. It makes you question whether the liberation was real. But it was. You're just living in between. The space where pain still echoes, even for no apparent reason. And that's part of the process. It's spiritual. It is sacred. The soul also needs time to let go of what the body has already left behind. The mind goes faster. The soul goes in its own time. And in that time, you need to stay, without charging yourself, without trying to force a healing that only happens with surrender. Rumi said, "Don't be content with stories of how things happen to others. Awaken your own legend. And maybe your legend begins now, the moment you choose to no longer run from this emptiness, not to fill it with distractions, but to understand it as an invitation. Emptiness is not absence, it's space. It's the soul opening up to something new, even if you don't know what it is yet. The invisible pain of freedom is actually the pain of letting the old die. And mourning is not just for when someone dies. Mourning is also necessary when you say goodbye to a love, an expectation, a part of yourself that no longer makes sense. And it is in this silent mourning that healing begins. When you stop fighting what you feel and decides to just be with it. Look inside, not with judgment, but with compassion, because your soul is trying to say something. And as long as you continue to ignore that call, it will feel like something is still holding you back. even after you've broken free. So, if what you've heard so far made sense to you, if something inside you identified with this post-liberation pain, leave a simple but powerful sentence in the comments. I'm still letting go. Write this down as a reminder to yourself, and as a way to show others who are going through the same thing, that they are not alone. And even after taking a deep breath, even after writing that you're still letting go, you realize that the process of liberation isn't a straight line. It's not an end point. It's not a clean cut between being trapped and being free, because there's a hidden paradox in this spiritual journey of healing. Sometimes freedom hurts more than imprisonment, and that can be hard to accept, hard to understand, hard to explain to those who have never felt it. You've freed yourself from the person, but the pain still lives within you. The physical bond has been broken, but the emotional ties remain pulsating. The scenarios are no longer the same, but the memories still inhabit your mind as if it all happened yesterday. And that's when you realize, the prison that most imprisons us has no bars. It has memories. You can change your place, your city, your routine, even your social circle. But if you don't change what you carry inside, you'll continue to feel the same. The mind travels through time, but the soul is still stuck in that moment, in that word that hurt you, in that hug that never came, in that promise that wasn't kept. You want to move on, but your emotional body is still stuck where the trauma occurred. And that is the true prison, not what others see, but what you carry in silence, the pain you try so hard to hide, the longing you no longer admit to feeling, the fear of being weak, for still remembering, for still dreaming, for still missing someone, even when reason knows it's gone. This is the paradox of liberation. You walk away expecting lightness, but find heaviness. You walk away expecting peace, but find silence. A silence that doesn't embrace you. It confronts you. A silence that doesn't soothe you. It exposes you. Because now there are no more excuses, no distractions, no others' presence to justify what you feel. Now it's just you and you, face to face with everything that's left. Rumi said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." But who has the courage to enter that cave? Who allows themselves to walk through the dark tunnel of their own emotions, knowing they might encounter versions of themselves they'd rather forget? It's easier to distract themselves, to move forward mechanically, to say they've overcome it, to pretend the prison is over just because the doors have opened. But what happens when you discover the key was with you all along and yet you remain standing at the door? Do you still feel guilty for leaving? Do you still carry the responsibility for ending something that no longer served you? Do you still find yourself fondly remembering those who hurt you, as if the pain were a fair price to pay for the crumbs of affection? Do you still justify someone else's absences with their own traumas, while ignoring your own? This is where emotional imprisonment resides, when you confuse love with attachment, presence with dependence, connection with disguised abandonment, when you believe you'll only be whole if the other person returns, or if someone comes to fill the void. But no one can occupy that space for you. Not the past, not the future. It's you who needs to enter the cave. It's you who needs to walk toward your own silence. Because only those who delve into themselves are able to find what they've lost. And sometimes, what was lost wasn't the other person. It was you. You lost yourself trying to please, trying to hold on, trying to fix what no longer depended on you. You lost yourself trying to be enough for someone who had already broken inside. You lost yourself giving up your essence to fit into spaces that diminished you. And now, free, you need to find yourself again. Rediscover who you are without the pain, without the story that held you captive, without the victim role you learned to play to protect yourself. Because the soul is tired of being a character. It wants to be whole. And to be whole, it needs to be true, even if it hurts, even if it deconstructs everything you believed about yourself. Liberation, when it's real, doesn't bring immediate relief. It brings a mirror, and this mirror shows you what you still need to embrace, not to go back, but to move forward with awareness, without carrying the debris of an unresolved love, without repeating the patterns that hurt you, without wearing the same masks just to avoid feeling alone. You need to look within. You need to realize that being free isn't the end of the pain. It's the beginning of coping. Because when you let go of the other person, you still need to let go of what they left inside you. The beliefs, the insecurities, the fear of never being loved again, the desperation for approval, the need for validation. All of this needs to go too, and it won't happen all at once. It happens gradually, one step at a time, one dive a day. Rumi didn't say healing is a cut. He said healing is surrender. It's allowing yourself to feel. It's opening yourself to the truth of your soul even if it tears you apart. Because it's only when everything falls apart that something new can be born. It's only when pain is embraced that it stops controlling you. And maybe that's where you are now, at the entrance to the cave, afraid, with doubts, with a silence that envelops you and frightens you, but also with a light beginning to emerge deep within, a light that doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. It comes from the place you've always avoided. It comes from the part of you that has been silenced for so long, but now is ready to speak. And she doesn't want to talk about the other. She wants to talk about you, about who you were before you lost yourself, about who you can be now that you're finding yourself, about the freedom that doesn't scream, but that transforms, about the self-love that needs no audience, about the silent healing that happens when you stop running from your pain. If you've made it this far, perhaps you're ready to take that step, to walk with more presence, to enter the cave and find the treasure that is yourself, whole, no longer needing chains to feel safe. And if this moment spoke to your soul, leave this quote in the comments. Pain no longer defines me. Write as a pact with yourself, a symbolic beginning of a new way of being. And then you've come this far. You've reached that point where you begin to realize that the pain you feel today is no longer about the other person. It's not about who left you, about what was said, about what happened. It's deeper, quieter, more intimate. You begin to understand that the hole you've left isn't shaped like a person. It's shaped like you, the part of you that was abandoned by you while trying to hold on to someone who was no longer there. You give so much of yourself, surrender so much, sustain so much. And in your attempt to keep the other person close, you lose yourself. You stop listening to yourself. You suppress what you feel. You ignore your own signs of exhaustion. You slowly diminish yourself until you no longer know who you are, other than who you tried to be loved. And when this attempt fails, when the other person leaves, when the relationship ends, when silence sets in, what's left isn't just longing. It's an existential void, an absence of self. Because what hurts now isn't just the absence of the other. It's the absence you feel of yourself, the absence of your own center, the disconnection from your truth, from your strength, from your soul. And that's why attachment doesn't end when the other leaves. It ends when you find yourself, when you return to yourself the power you ceded, when you pick up the pieces you left scattered in places, promises, looks, and stories that never fully embraced you. This is the core of the spiritual root of attachment. It doesn't arise from true love. It arises from wounds, from neediness, from the lack of emotional structure that, at some point in your life, made you believe you needed someone to be complete. And then, when someone appears and gives you crumbs of attention, you feel a relief, a sense of purpose, a possibility, as if, finally, there were someone capable of seeing in you what you yourself don't see. But this relief is unstable. It's fleeting. It's illusory. Because while the other is your anchor, you have no ground of your own. And every time that person threatens to leave, the ground gives way. Desperation sets in. The soul goes into a state of alert, not for love, but for emotional survival. Rumi said, "You must keep breaking your heart until it opens." And perhaps now is that time. The time to open. The time to recognize that you've built prisons within yourself. Prisons of fear, of guilt, of emotional dependence disguised as passion. Prisons where you place the other as the center, as the cure, as destiny. But it isn't. It never was. The other person didn't come to complete you. They came to show you where you were still incomplete. And now that they're gone, you need to look at that place that's been exposed. And I know, it's hard, it's painful, it's lonely, but it's also necessary. Because until you make this internal shift, you'll continue to confuse presence with salvation. You'll continue to believe that the next relationship needs to be different, when what needs to change is you. Not your worth, but your consciousness, the way you see yourself, the way you treat yourself, the way you choose to love yourself, even when no one else is looking. And if you feel this is true, If you feel like you've experienced this kind of attachment that swallowed you, imprisoned you, and lost you, then perhaps you too are beginning to see that the freedom you so desperately seek isn't outside, it's within. It begins the moment you stop begging for love and start offering yourself presence. When you stop chasing after those who ignore you and start running toward your essence. The root of attachment lies in the wounded child within you, the one who learned that she had to strive to deserve attention, that she had to please others to avoid rejection, that she had to remain silent to be accepted. This child is still there, waiting for you, and until you embrace her, she will continue searching outside herself for the love that only you can give. She will continue creating bonds that repeat the same pain, giving everything and receiving almost nothing, giving herself completely and still feeling alone. But you're not alone now. You're here, and that means a part of you has already begun to awaken. You've realized that this cycle isn't love, it's emotional programming. It's an unconscious pattern. It's an open wound, and only you can heal it. Only you can break this repetition that keeps you trapped in stories that always end the same way, with you empty-handed, heart-weary, and soul forgotten. It's not the absence of the other, it's the absence of self. And this absence isn't filled with unanswered messages, nor with temporary returns, nor with empty declarations. This absence is only healed by reconnection, with radical presence, with inner compassion, with sacred silence, with the decision to stop chasing and start turning inward. You no longer need to fight to be seen. You need to see yourself. You no longer need to beg for affection. You need to embrace yourself. And I know, it sounds simple, but it's not easy. Because this kind of healing requires courage. Courage to face yourself. Courage to feel. Courage to stay where it hurts, without anesthesia. Because the anesthesia of attachment no longer works. What worked before, distracting yourself, keeping busy, romanticizing the pain, now only postpones the inevitable, the need to reconnect with yourself. Rumi also said, "The soul has been chained by 1,000 bonds. The desire is to sever each one. And the desire that arises within you now is no longer a desire for another. It is the desire to free yourself, to breathe lightly again, to sleep peacefully, to experience relationships where you no longer need to diminish yourself to be accepted, where you can simply be, whole, deep, spiritual, without needing to prove anything. Because when the soul returns to inhabit its own body, attachment loses its strength. It can still appear, but you are no longer guided by it. You see it, you feel it, you embrace it, but you don't abandon yourself. You remain with yourself, and it is this permanence that transforms. If this part of the video touched you in a special way, if you feel like you've already carried this kind of internal absence and are ready to come back to yourself, leave the following sentence in the comments. I come back to myself. Write it as a vow of return, as a spiritual choice, as a symbol that liberation has begun, and this time it no longer depends on anyone but you. And now that you've begun to come back to yourself, now that your emotional body begins to thaw, perhaps a new truth is revealing itself more clearly. You're not just afraid of pain, you're also afraid of who you would be without it, because somewhere along the way, pain became part of your identity. It stopped being just a symptom and became a familiar place, a painful but familiar ground, a constant but predictable shadow. And that's why even though you say you want to heal, that you want to free yourself, you feel something inside resisting. Because pain, when experienced for too long, can become an emotional addiction. Yes, it's hard to hear, but you have to. You have to recognize that repeated pain becomes a habit, and habits take root. They create comfort zones. They create internal structures that say, it's better to suffer than to face emptiness. Because emptiness is scary. Silence is scary. Peace, when you're not used to it, feels threatening. It feels false, as if at any moment something will fall apart again. And so, out of unconscious reassurance, you return to where it hurts. Return to the obsessive thought, to the recurring memory, to the silent attachment you swore you'd already overcome. But no one told you this. No one told you that healing isn't just about feeling the pain, but about letting go of it. No one warned you that suffering can be addictive, because it gives you a strange kind of control, a plot where you know what to expect, A script where the victim has space, where the world needs to understand you, care for you, be patient with you. And you're not wrong for wanting this. We all, on some level, want to be seen in our pain. We want a non-judgmental embrace, a welcoming presence. But when pain becomes the only way to be seen, something gets lost. You start to hide within it. And worse, you start to define yourself by it. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters." But what if you're covering that wound with pride, with resistance, with spiritual, emotional, or mental justifications? What if, without realizing it, you're using your pain as a shield to avoid having to change? Because changing hurts more than repeating yourself. Changing requires breaking with parts of yourself that have been with you for years. It requires leaving behind not only the person who hurt you, but also the version of yourself that was shaped by that pain. And not everyone is ready for this. Not everyone is willing to let go of the known to walk toward the unknown. Even if this uncertainty is healing. Even if this healing is freedom. Because freedom, when it's real, also demands responsibility. It demands that you stop blaming others, that you stop expecting retribution, acknowledgement, and apologies that may never come. True healing begins when you stop waiting for the closure that others never knew how to provide. Have you been waiting for something? Have you been holding out hope that that person will finally understand what they've done? That they'll return more mature, more aware, more present? Have you been living in the illusion that a reunion can fix what was broken? I understand. I know how tempting that sounds. Like a beautiful fantasy to fill lonely nights. But it's a fantasy. Because those who leave without awareness don't return with presence. Those who hurt you unconsciously will hardly return with the light you deserve. And even if they did, you'd still be in the same place of waiting, of neediness, of turning away from yourself. And that's where the invisible danger lies. Continuing to hold on to this pain as if it were destiny. Continuing to tell yourself it's normal to live like this. That one day it will pass. That one day you'll forget. But it won't pass while you just wait. You won't forget while you just resist. Because resisting isn't the same as healing. Resisting is remaining in an internal war. It's moving forward with your feet, but looking back with your heart. It's continuing to say everything's okay, while breaking down silently inside. You may be in that place right now, where it seems like nothing makes sense anymore, where everything seems like an endless cycle, where the same emotions repeat themselves like a broken record. But that doesn't mean you're failing. It means something inside is calling you to a deeper level of awareness, to a place where pain ceases to be the protagonist, where it becomes a bridge, not a prison. You need to go through it. Don't skip it. Don't ignore it. Don't numb it. Go through it, with presence, with compassion, with courage, because pain only changes shape when it's faced with love. As long as you keep hiding from it, it will continue to dominate you. It will continue to choose for you. It will continue to limit your steps, your affections, your dreams. And you deserve more than that. You deserve to be free from pain, not just from the other person. You deserve to be whole, not just surviving. You deserve to live with ease, not just pretending you've overcome it. But to do that, you need to let go. Let go of the story you repeat silently. Let go of the pride that keeps you from asking for help. Let go of the armor that keeps you from those who could truly love you. Let go of the role of always needing to be strong, even when you're falling apart inside. Rumi said, "Your task is not to seek love, but only to seek and find within yourself all the barriers you have built against it." And perhaps now you are seeing one of those barriers. Pain as identity, suffering as language, absence as a safety zone. You can choose differently. You can start today to rewrite this story. Not in a rush, not with ready-made formulas, but with awareness, with breathing, with space, with the willingness to be kind to yourself. Even when the world seems to be moving faster, you can choose depth. Even when everything around you says it's over, you can allow yourself to say, "I'm still figuring out what's left." And that's okay, because the soul has its time, healing has its music, and you're dancing to it now. Even if the steps still seem confusing, even if the pain still screams from time to time, the truth is, the more you listen to yourself, the less noise the world makes. The more you embrace yourself, the less need you have to prove yourself. And that, in itself, is a miracle happening. If this part touched you, If you feel like you've gotten too used to a pain that no longer makes sense, leave the following sentence in the comments. I am not my pain. She writes this as a reminder to herself, as a gentle cry of release, as a seed planted in her soul. Now let us move on, because pain is not the end. It is just the passage, and the next door is about to open. And maybe you think you're over it. Maybe you tell yourself and others that you're okay, that you've moved on, that the whole thing is in the past. But when no one's looking, you still revisit the profile, casually, just to see if that person has posted anything new, just to check if they seem happy, just to look for some sign, any clue that maybe there's still a place for you there. And you don't even realize that, with this simple gesture, you're returning to the cell. You're closing the door on yourself. You're tightening the shackles of the same cycle you once swore to break. This is the unresolved emotional loop. This is the invisible prison that almost no one talks about, because it's discreet. It doesn't shout, it doesn't expose itself, it doesn't appear on social media. It lives behind the scenes of the mind, in the gaps between one task and another, in the silences between a message sent and one that never arrives. It lives in the small relapses that you rationalize. It's just curiosity. It's just a memory. It was just a dream. But the body knows. The soul feels. And the heart still beats at the same frequency of something that should have already ceased. Have you ever been there? To the place where reason tells you one thing but your emotions insist on repeating another? Where you declare freedom with words, but live in slavery with your emotions? Where everything outside seems overcome, but inside you still converse with ghosts? And these ghosts have names, voices, and smells. They inhabit your thoughts like unwanted visitors you secretly invite back in, even though you know they'll mess everything up. Maybe you're experiencing this right now, or maybe you know someone who has. But let me tell you a little story. Nothing extraordinary, just a portrait of the human soul when it hasn't yet fully found itself. She was a woman like so many others, strong on the outside, sensitive on the inside, intelligent, authentic, dedicated. And that was precisely why she gave so much of herself. She believed love was a safe place, that if she gave her all, she would receive it back. And for a while it seemed she was right. He said the right words, looked at her as if he saw her very essence, promised futures with a naturalness that made her dream. But time revealed what the words couldn't sustain. Small oversights became constant. Silences began to hurt more than screams. Physical presences became emotional absences. And suddenly, she was alone in the relationship, trying to make it work alone, trying to hold together something that had already crumbled on the other side, and she was gone. One day he woke up and decided he deserved more, that the pain of staying was greater than the fear of leaving, and he did. He walked away, blocked her, promised himself he'd never come back. For weeks, he bravely resisted. He rebuilt routines, sought help, wrote himself letters. But one morning, he typed his name again, clicked on his profile. He read the captions as if searching for hidden messages. He interpreted photos as signs, and he cried, not because he wanted to go back, but because he still didn't know how to move on. This is the afterlife that almost no one shows. This is the afterlife that doesn't fit into ready-made advice. This is the afterlife where the soul is still relearning to live without what hurt, but gave meaning. Because pain also gives meaning when it's all you know. And it's in that moment that you understand. The relationship is over, but the prison still exists. The cell is open, but you still go back to sleep on the same old cold floor. Because the new is frightening. Because the unknown is paralyzing. Because the silence of healing seems too great for those who have grown accustomed to surviving in the noise of pain. Perhaps you've also wondered if it was your fault. Maybe you've revisited old conversations trying to find where you went wrong. Maybe you've blamed yourself for things that were never under your control. Because the emotional prisoner isn't shackled by real chains, but by memories manipulated by the ego, by narratives that repeat themselves. If I had done things differently, if I hadn't said that, if I had waited a little longer. But none of these phrases change what happened. They only prolong what still binds you. And what hurts most isn't the other person's absence. It's the lack of answers. It's not knowing why it was so hard for them to stay. It's not understanding why someone you claim to love left so easily. It's not being able to explain to your heart that it wasn't your fault, that you gave your best, that love shouldn't be synonymous with solitary effort. But no one teaches this in school. No one prepares us for the end of something that seemed eternal. No one explains how to live after giving everything, and it still wasn't enough. And that's why you keep coming back, even if only in your thoughts. Because there's still a part of you that doesn't understand what happened, that hasn't accepted it, that still hopes for a different ending. Even if you know, deep down, it won't happen. And that's okay. Don't blame yourself for feeling. Feeling is a sign that your soul is alive, that you still believe in love even when it failed. But now it's time to go back, to leave the invisible cell, to close the door you yourself left ajar, not with anger, not in a rush, but with respect for everything that was, and with love for everything you can still be, because you no longer need this cycle. You no longer need to punish yourself for an ending you didn't choose. You no longer need to live with emotional ups and downs. The time for confusion is over. The time for imprisonment is over. Now is the time for return, for reunion, for rebuilding. And it all begins when you decide to stop going back. If this part of the video spoke to you, if you have ever experienced this type of invisible prison, leave the following sentence in the comments. I choose not to go back. Write as a commitment to your own freedom, as an internal declaration that the cycle is over, and that this time you will follow through until the end. And then there comes a moment, perhaps now, perhaps only after a long time of trying to return to yourself, when you begin to realize something no one has told you clearly, something that only the profound experience of pain allows you to understand. Truly freeing yourself has nothing to do with what others do, say, or acknowledge. Freeing yourself means stopping waiting. It means stopping waiting for others to apologize, to understand, to acknowledge your pain, to come back different, to finally make you feel seen. And the most painful thing is realizing how much you still waited for this. How much of your healing was conditioned on the validation of those who didn't know how to love you when they had the chance. Because you can say you're okay, that you've overcome it, that you no longer need that person. But if deep down, you still live in anticipation of regret, a message, a belated declaration, then you're still trapped. Trapped in the gesture that never came, in the look that never returned, in the explanation that never arrived. But the truth is, healing doesn't come from outside. It doesn't depend on others. It always begins within. The moment you choose, truly choose, to stop looking outside for what only you can offer yourself. Rumi said, "Close your eyes to the world, open the eyes of the soul." And that's exactly it. When you close your eyes to what you expected to come from the outside, recognition, validation, love, healing, you begin to see the soul, and the soul doesn't scream. The soul whispers. It doesn't ask, it doesn't plead, it just waits. It waits for the moment you decide to return to it, and maybe that moment is now. You spent too much time trying to understand the other person, trying to decipher why they left, why they acted that way, why they changed so suddenly, why they were so cold, so absent, so cruel. You immersed yourself in theories, justifications, and endless analyses. But the more you tried to understand, the further away you became from yourself. Because the question was never, why did he do this to me? The real question was always, why did I stay so long with someone who made me doubt my worth? And that question can only be answered within. Inside lies a story older than this recent pain. A story that began earlier, much earlier, perhaps in childhood, perhaps in another relationship, perhaps in a void no one ever knew how to name. And until this story is looked at with love, you will continue trying to fill it with another. You will continue searching outside for that which only you can heal. You will continue to return, even after you've left. You will remain trapped, even after you've freed yourself. And that's where silent healing begins. When you accept that you won't get what you expected, that you won't receive what you wanted, that you won't hear the words you've rehearsed so often in your head. Healing begins when you stop negotiating with what has already happened. When you decide to stop trying to change what's no longer in your control. When you finally accept that it's not your responsibility to teach anyone how to treat you with love, and that the love you hoped for must first come from within. You need to look at yourself truthfully, with presence, with the kind of attention you used to give others, with the same delicacy you used to understand the pain of others, with the same generosity with which you offered everything, even what you lacked, because now you are the one who needs care, acceptance, forgiveness, And this forgiveness is not for the other. It is for you. For having abandoned yourself, trying to be loved. For having forgotten yourself, trying to be remembered. For having hurt yourself, trying to heal the other. Silent healing begins when you make peace with your story. When you stop fighting what you've experienced. When you understand that it didn't have to be different. That what happened hurt, yes. But it also revealed you. It revealed your shadows. It revealed your limits. It revealed where you were still absent from yourself. And that's precisely where the power lies. Because an awakened soul doesn't need the world to change. It changes the way it relates to the world. And when you change the way you relate to what you feel, something profound happens. Attachment loses its strength. Longing becomes gratitude. Absence becomes space. Silence becomes prayer. And you begin to heal without fuss, without urgency, without the need to show anything to anyone. Because true healing is internal, invisible, slow. But when it happens, you feel it. You feel it in the lightness of your thoughts, in the deepening of your breathing, in the peace that comes without reason, in the absence of the need to be understood, explained, or accepted, because you've already accepted yourself. Rumi said, "You are sitting here now with the two of us. You are beside us. Why then do you continue to live in fear?" And perhaps that question is there within you too. Why even so close to your own soul do you still abandon yourself? Why even hearing these signs do you still hesitate to trust yourself? The answer isn't outside. It's in the immersion. It's in the presence. It's in the moment you close your eyes to the world and finally see yourself. Maybe today is that moment. The moment to stop seeking justifications, to stop chasing different endings, to stop waiting for others to understand. Because the pain that remains doesn't need explanation. It needs space, it needs listening, it needs transmutation. And all of this happens when you decide to return to yourself. It's not a quick process, it's not simple, but it's real. It's silent but profound. It's invisible but transformative. And if you feel like you're at this point, if something inside you identifies with this silent key to healing, then leave the following sentence in the comments. "I choose to return to myself in silence." He writes as a symbolic gesture, as a beginning, as an intimate prayer that says, "I no longer expect from others what only I can offer myself." And now, let's continue. Because silence still has more to reveal to you. And then, something begins to shift. Not spectacularly, not like a bolt of lightning that splits the sky or a soul-shattering revelation, but quietly, deeply, in the most secret place of your soul. Change doesn't come quickly. It comes with presence. It arrives the moment you stop identifying with the pain you feel and begin, for the first time in a long time, to recognize the soul that lives on despite it. Because yes, you are the soul that continues to love even after being hurt. You are the soul that, even though hurt, chose not to become bitter. You are the soul that, even though broken, decided to continue searching for meaning, searching for light, searching for something greater. Spiritual awakening is not the end of pain. It is the recognition that you are not the pain. It is the moment when consciousness expands and realizes, what I feel now is part of the process, but it doesn't define who I am. It's the moment when you look at everything you've experienced, the losses, the voids, the silences, the cycles, and don't deny them, but also no longer carry them as if they were your identity. You begin to let go. Let go of the narratives. Let go of the roles. Let go of the fears that once determined every step. And in place of these shackles, you begin to find something that was always there, but had been forgotten. Your essence. You are already free. You just need to remember who you are without the pain. Because pain, no matter how intense, is temporary. It has a function, a purpose, a cycle. It arrives to reveal, to show what was hidden, to pull you out of what was false, to push you inward. And once it fulfills its function, you no longer need it. You no longer need to cling to it as if it were yours. And that's when awakening happens. The moment you understand that pain was part of the journey, but not the final destination. And awakening hurts. It hurts because you begin to see clearly. You begin to see where you lost yourself. You begin to see who you let in too much. You begin to see the times you betrayed yourself in the name of love. But this pain isn't the same as before. It's not paralyzing. It's a pain that comes with awareness. A pain that cleanses, purifies, transforms. Because when the soul awakens, it no longer accepts living on crumbs. It no longer tolerates the pacts that kept it trapped. It no longer submits to what diminishes it. And that's scary, yes, because you begin to lose people. You begin to lose patterns. You begin to lose everything that was sustained by your previous version. But you also begin to gain truth, to gain peace, to gain depth. What happens after awakening isn't a calm sea. It's a call to a more authentic life. A life where you no longer silence yourself to be accepted, where you no longer diminish yourself to fit in, where you no longer beg for attention, because you begin to realize that the source that fuels everything you seek isn't outside, it's within. And the soul knows this. It always knew. It was just waiting for you to return. You may feel like you're not ready yet. You may feel like you're still carrying a lot, that you still have a lot to heal, to understand, to let go of. And that's okay. Awakening isn't about being ready. It's about being willing to look, to feel, to allow yourself to be who you are, even without guarantees, even with fear, even without knowing exactly what it will be like. Because a free soul doesn't need certainties. It needs truth. And truth doesn't come with maps. It comes with presence. It comes with breathing. It comes with surrender. You begin to realize that you no longer need to control everything, that you no longer need to constantly protect yourself, that you no longer need to live on the defensive, waiting for the next abandonment, the next disappointment, because now you are with yourself, whole, awake, and this self-presence begins to heal what no one else could heal. It begins to fill spaces that no one else could. It begins to bring a peace that doesn't depend on external factors, a peace that comes from finding your own center, that center you so often ignored to chase someone else, that center you abandoned while prioritizing the pain of others, that center you forgot while trying to fix the unbreakable. Now, it returns, and when it returns, everything changes. Because the world may remain the same, people may continue to fail, situations may continue to be challenging, but inside, something takes hold, something aligns, something awakens. And once awakened, the soul never goes back to sleep. You start talking less and feeling more. You start expecting less and trusting more. You start depending less and being more. And this being is in no rush. It doesn't hunger for recognition. It doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, because it knows. It knows it already is. It knows it always was. It knows that what it sought outside was inside all along. And perhaps you'll see yourself there, in that place of return, in that place where everything begins to make sense even if it's still unclear, where the questions remain but they no longer hurt as before, where the cycles still exist, but you no longer get lost in them, where longing appears but no longer dominates you. Because now you know, you are not the pain you feel. You are the soul that continues to love, despite everything. You are the soul that chose to live consciously, that chose to awaken, that chose to be with you. And that is freedom. Not the kind of freedom that shouts, that imposes itself, that flaunts itself, but the silent freedom of those who have reconnected with their essence, of those who no longer need applause to know they're on the right path, of those who no longer negotiate their own worth, of those who have finally returned home. If you felt that this awakening is also happening in you, if somewhere in your being you know that you are already free even if you sometimes forget, leave the phrase in the comments, "My soul has already awakened." He writes as a reminder, as an intimate testimony that, despite everything, you continue, and it continues to grow closer and closer to you. Now breathe, because there is still more to be revealed. And then you reach a point where it's no longer about resisting. It's no longer about fighting everything that happened to you, everything that remained, everything that hurt. Because the more you try to distance yourself from the pain, the more it haunts you. The more you treat it like an enemy, the louder it screams inside you. And maybe now, in this moment when you start listening more closely, you'll realize that pain isn't here to destroy you. It's here to show you the way. What you've avoided feeling most, what you've tried most to silence, hide, rationalize, is exactly what's trying to guide you back home. Pain only becomes unbearable when it's denied, when you insist on pretending everything is fine, when you force yourself to be too strong on the outside while everything inside is about to crumble. But when you stop fighting the prison and start looking at it with different eyes, eyes of compassion, listening, acceptance, something changes. The cell is no longer a punishment. It's a lesson. It's the mirror you've avoided looking at for so long. And by looking at it, you begin to see yourself more deeply, not with guilt, not with shame, not in a rush to resolve, but with presence, because only presence transforms. Only when you remain with the pain without running away, without getting distracted, without deviating, does it begin to tell you the truth about what you still carry, about what you still believe, about what still binds you. Even if on the surface everything seems resolved, the soul knows when there is still something to release. The soul feels, and until you face what is still trapped inside, you will continue to carry the weight of everything that has already left you. Have you ever wondered why certain memories still come back? Why do certain names still hurt? Why, even knowing it's over, does it still feel like a part of you is still there? It's because you haven't completely said goodbye. You haven't yet allowed yourself to let go with love. You haven't yet made peace with the end. And it's at this point in the journey that you need to make a decision. Not a rational decision, but a spiritual decision. The decision to stop carrying what is no longer yours, what no longer resonates with your soul, what no longer speaks to your new consciousness. Being trapped in what once was is like trying to breathe in a windowless room. It's suffocating, limiting, and deeply unfair to who you're becoming. You're no longer the same. You no longer feel the same way. You no longer believe the same things. And that's growth. That's evolution. That's spiritual transformation. But for this transformation to happen fully, you need to tell yourself, enough. No more keeping alive a story that's already over. No more revisiting pain as if it were still fresh. No more using the past as an excuse not to live in the present. This is the invitation to transformation. The moment when the soul says, I'm ready to let go. Not because it's forgotten, but because it's learned. Not because it's erased the pain, but because it's honored it. Not because it no longer feels it, but because it now knows what to do with what it feels. This is the great turning point. When you stop identifying with the pain and begin to identify with the strength that arose from it. When you understand that, behind every tear, there was a key. Behind every silence, there was a lesson. Behind every absence, there was a reunion with yourself waiting to happen. Rumi said, don't turn away. Keep your eyes on the pain. It may have hidden blessings, and maybe that's what you've been avoiding. The possibility that this pain, so uncomfortable, so persistent, so silently present, is here to heal you, to bring you back to yourself, to remind you of what you lost trying to hold on to what wasn't yours. But now, all that can change. Not because the world outside will change, but because you are changing, because you are saying yes to what matters, because you are, finally, choosing yourself. Don't wait any longer. Don't continue negotiating with what diminishes you. Don't stay where there is no love. Today, do this for yourself, not tomorrow, not when you feel completely ready. Because readiness never comes before decision. Clarity doesn't come before surrender. Relief doesn't come before the plunge. And you've waited too long. You've held the weight too long, you've survived too long. Now it's time to live, to breathe lightly, to allow yourself to exist without the weight of what's already gone. Transformation isn't a grand event. It's an intimate gesture. It's you right now saying quietly, I don't want this anymore. It's you right now, pausing for a moment, closing your eyes, and asking yourself, what am I still carrying that has already left me? And by asking that question, you begin to see, you begin to feel, you begin to let go, little by little, in your own time. But let go, because what brought you here won't take you forward. You need to make space. You need to be silent. You need to listen to what your soul is trying to say. She whispers. She doesn't shout. But she insists. She insists because she loves you, because she knows what lies on the other side of pain, because she's seen the freedom that awaits you, and she's taking you there. But to do that, you need to trust. Trust that this discomfort you feel now is part of the process. Trust that this cycle isn't repeating itself. It's closing. Trust that, even without knowing the next step, you're already on the path. And that the path doesn't require perfection, just presence. If this touched something inside you, if this part of the video awakened some silent truth that was hidden, leave the sentence in the comments. Today I release what has already left me. Write it as a vow, as an intimate ritual of transformation. as a way of declaring to your soul that you are ready. And let's move on, because there is more to release, and even more to receive. If you've made it this far, it wasn't by chance. If something inside you remained until the end, even in silence, even in tears, even in conflict, it's because your soul is awakening. It's ready for the next step, ready to remember the freedom that has always been yours even when the world tried to convince you otherwise. This video was a portal, but the journey doesn't end there. It's just beginning. And if you feel like you want to walk deeper, if your soul is ready to soar higher, subscribe to the channel now. This space is a refuge, a temple of words for those who no longer accept half-hearted living. And if you stayed until the end, leave a like. It's not just any button. It's a symbolic gesture. It's you saying, I felt it. Now it doesn't stop here. The next video is appearing on your screen now. Click on it. Continue the journey. Your soul has already begun to awaken, and it doesn't want to go back to sleep.